What's going on, everybody? This is Achilles OBT coming at you with a brand new video. And in today's video, we will be welcoming you back to Paragon. This is going to be a video that mainly showcases what I feel is basically the game's biggest selling point at the moment. Now, again, at the time of this recording, the game is still in early access, as you can see from the bottom of the screen right here. This is still in early access right now, so like it's not exactly available. I do believe, I'm not sure, I got to double check this. But if anybody's interested, I may or may not have an additional code for this game. If you're interested in playing it on the PC, just let me know in a message. I believe I may have an extra code for this game so that you don't necessarily have to wait. But that's not what this video is about. And I'm not 100% sure that I do have one, but I did get an email 2 days ago that said I might actually have an additional code. So I have to look into that. But either way, this card is about the biggest thing that I feel like this game has going for it, which is its card deck building feature. Now, for people who are unfamiliar with this game, I'm going to flip this over here for a second. Cards are essentially what decide what kind of character you're going to be having necessarily, as far as like their strengths, their weaknesses, things of that nature. Because if you look, like the heroes themselves all have, if you see right here with what I highlight Decker, she's listed as a caster, and her two affinities are growth and order. So every single character in the game has two different affinities that basically dictate what cards they're allowed to use. Or in Gadget's case, she only has one. But most of these characters, from what I've seen, they have two affinities that basically dictate which cards they'll be able to use. And you have cards no matter the affinity, all cards have all things that strengthen all factors. So it's not like you're going to be picking a corruption character that can't heal itself, or a fury character that can only do damage. It doesn't work like that. Like, every affinity has upgrades all around for all characters. The problem, well, not the problem, but the catch to this system, though, as you see by my number of cards that I have, is that you have to play the game. Well, if you don't want to pay, because you can buy cards if you want, but you have to essentially play the game to unlock these cards. And you don't necessarily, when you create a brand new account, they don't just give you this feature of creating your own card deck. You have to play with the default ones that they have assigned for you. Now, real quick, the default classes are actually really good. They're just not as super overpowered as any potential like custom made deck is, because with a custom deck, you get to pick exactly what you want to upgrade on your characters. So this is one thing that I feel like Paragon has a little bit of an advantage over with like other games that are out there in this kind of tier, is that you could essentially, and I know League of Legends kind of has this going for it. It has had this going for it for a while now, but I just like the way it does. I prefer the Paragon system over the League of Legends system. So I'm not downplaying that game at all, because I know they have it too, as well as Smite. Like, all of these games have it, but I think the way Paragon does it is a little bit better, and that's just a personal opinion, a personal preference. But unlike Heroes, which is the one game out there that doesn't let you exactly fine-tune what the strengths and weaknesses are of your heroes. Yes, you can pick talents in that game, but you can't, like, say for instance, take a warrior. You can't take a warrior that's not overly tanky, and make them overly tanky. If they're not a tank, a frontline tank by design, you're kind of stuck with that. Now, they all have other strengths, sure, but you can't buff that one area of them, and that's where a system like this comes into play, where you can absolutely micromanage and decide, basically, just to showcase how many cards I actually have, you can decide like exactly what you want your character to be. And like I said, I feel like that's a massive advantage, and I think it's a really, really, really good design choice for a game like this, and it makes the card creator really, really, really fun to dive into. Now, mind you, I believe you have to wait until level 7 or level 8 before you can do this. And I was actually scared to even try this, because I got comfortable with the default card decks. But to showcase a little bit of what this is about, and I currently have 6 decks built, because I don't have every deck slot unlocked. So like 6 characters that I feel comfortable with using, I already have decks for. And when you highlight the cards, they basically show you the percentage of like what everything caters to. So the axe would pretty much be offense, the shield would be defense, and the wrench would be utility. So like I have different percentages that cater to my playstyle, and that's basically all it is to it. Now, I actually didn't realize I still have a Chimera deck over here, and that's why I wanted to create a deck for. So I guess I'm gonna have to change that on the fly. I just have 6 characters basically that I'm comfortable with. But to show you a little bit of what this is about, which is what the video is for, I'm going to create a brand new deck here. So another character that I don't have a deck for right now that I'm actually pretty comfortable with would be Grux. Now, for people who don't want to dive into this necessarily, you can copy the default decks from the game right here if you wanted to. You could just copy the decks, micromanage, and like swap out one or two things that you don't like, and just go from there. Me personally, I wouldn't advise that, especially when you get a lot of cards. Now, you have to have a certain amount of cards in order to make this really, really work. I'm not going to lie to you about that, because if you only have, like, say 30 cards and they're not all from the same affinity, you're not going to have that many options to go with. Now, the first thing they're going to ask you to do when you create your card is to pick your strongest card in your deck, basically. Now, the Prime is basically the Baron equivalent for League of Legends types out there. This is the Baron equivalent, or Heroes of the Storm. This is basically the boss character. Like, you go as a team, you take it down, and you get a purple orb that you have to carry to either the enemy team's location or your friendly location. Now, the enemy team's location gives you a buff, which would be one of these three cards, essentially, which is what you're picking right here. And if you bring it to your own area, it's called a defensive dunk. Basically, you get back all your inhibitors that are destroyed. It's a very, very powerful strat when it's executed correctly. But this is focusing on offense. So, the three cards highlighted here, you can only get one of these, by the way. So you want to make this choice depending on the character you're using. Now, seeing as I'm using a damage dealer, I'm actually going to go with the Warlord, which will increase my physical damage quite a bit and my damage bonus. So, that's the card I'm going to tack on here. Now, to get these cards started like correctly, or I should actually point out things on the bottom of the screen. Now, depending on the character you have here, the game is actually going to let you know what with these light colored arrows. They're going to let you know what's recommended for the hero you're currently trying to build a card deck for. So when you see these green arrows here, basically, I'm just going to say they're green. They're really not, but I'm just going to say that. When you see these green arrows, basically, these are the things you want to highlight in your deck. These are the things. You can do that simply by clicking on it once. When it's gold, you'll see that all the cards that I have here are only going to are mainly buffing this one statistic or attribute that I highlighted, which is attack speed. So these are all the cards I have in my deck currently that I've unlocked that all influence attack speed. Now, you can stack these on top of each other. We could add critical bonus, we could add critical chance, we could add physical damage and health, because those are all things that are highlighted on Grux. And this is the premise, this is the basis of like the kind of card deck you want to build for Grux. Now, I'm going to put this out there in advance that this is my personal preference for how I like to build card decks, because everybody has their own style. So do not take this as the one hardcore way to build a deck. This is just what I found to be very, very effective for me personally, and it's just something that I wanted to share on the channel. Now, before you highlight any of those things, essentially what you want to do is get these equipment cards out of the way. You want to have some of these on deck, like the Harvester key card, basically, where you could put down a Harvester that gives XP to your entire team in one shot. You definitely want to equip those, and there's no limit to how much equipment you can have, so you can just stack all 4 of these on if you want, and you'll be just fine. The thing is, though, you have to essentially pick these when you go into a game. That's when they start counting against you and things of that nature. But this is just the card deck building portion, so none of this counts. You can just stack as many of these as you want, and basically the power numbers, it'll let you know how much power you currently have in your deck, because that's what these, I should explain power. Power is basically the little number you see on the upper left-hand corner of each card. Basically lets you know how many power points you need to buy the card. So these are all equipment cards, which is why they're all essentially 1-point cards. They're not expensive, they're super cheap, super efficient, but not terribly overpowered to the point where they break the game. So these cards don't feature any upgrades whatsoever. They're just a base value card, and that's it. Now, what do I mean when I say upgrade? If I highlight this card, you'll notice the difference between this card and the card on the top of the screens. This has 3 little circles on the bottom of it, which have space for upgrades. Now, when I click this card, you're going to see all the cards that I have currently in my deck that predominantly pertain to upgrades, and each one has a different purpose. You'll see the card right here is a minor strike. It's only a 1-point card, and it adds 7.6 physical damage to my character. Now, the number I also want to highlight here is the number underneath the card. This lets you know how many of these cards you have. The left indicates how many you have available, like that you haven't used yet, and when you use one, this will decrease. This indicates the total number, so you definitely want to keep an eye on that. And the other thing I want to point out with cards, and this is a little bit more, slightly more advanced, when you're looking at the cards you want to basically pick for your deck, you absolutely want to pay attention to what the fully upgraded bonus is, because you want to make sure the fully upgraded bonus is working towards buffing the strong suits of your characters. If they're not buffing the strong suit of, like, say if you have a, for whatever reason, if you have a character that needs physical damage and physical armor, and you pick a card that buffs both, but the fully upgraded bonus buffs something like, say, mana, which your character doesn't need at all. That's an extra bonus that you're tacking onto your character that basically holds no value on the character you're using. So that's as opposed to a card like this that buffs two things that my character needs and then further buffs one of those very same attributes. So you want to be paying attention to that depending on the character you're using. You want to make sure you look at your card really, really closely and make sure that the fully upgraded bonus does pertain to your character. Now we're going to close this because I don't want to add that necessarily just yet. I don't know where we're going with this build, but you'll see that these are the lower end cards. They'll have one fully upgraded bonus. When you start making your way down to some of the higher end cards, if I even have any, like I don't know if I have like a 4-pointer or a 5-pointer, but see some of the higher end cards down here that are on my bottom of my deck, they'll have 2 fully upgraded bonuses. So again, that's something you absolutely want to pay attention to and take full advantage of when you're creating a card deck. You want to try and stack on as many bonuses as you can. But there is a method to the madness that I definitely want to get into when I start building this deck. Now, me personally, I'm going to build this deck to cater more to my playstyle. That's the other upside to the card deck system. Because like I pointed out, how the green arrows tell you what your character is really, really strong at. They have red arrows that tell you what not to do at the same time. And this is not something that, like, okay, just because they said it, I shouldn't do it. No. Energy, something like energy penetration, Grux doesn't deal, in this one specific case, Grux does not deal energy damage at all. So energy penetration is a bonus tacked onto energy damage. You have no need of something like this when Grux doesn't deal energy damage to begin with. He's a physical damage character. So you don't want to like overlook the red arrows. You don't want to see those and be like, I'm going to do it anyway because I think this will be good. No, they're telling you that these are not good for a reason because they literally play no part in what the character does. So you don't want to be like a little bold-headed about this and just like tack it on because to put it bluntly, you're wasting a card slot that could be put towards something else that would actually help your character. Now, the one in the middle that I want to point out are the cards that have neither arrows. Now, these you could actually get a little flexible with. These are the ones that you can tack on because they actually may have a value. They're just not the highest value. So if you want to get a little advanced with your card deck and start catching people off guard, these cards that don't have any arrows on them are the way to go. These are the ones where you can catch your opponents off guard, where you could potentially use a tank that doesn't have physical damage as a green arrow. You could throw on physical damage on a tank, a frontline tank, and when you hit people, they will feel it because they don't expect you to have that damage. And that's exactly why I think the card deck system is so awesome. That's what I love about it so much, and I think it's so good. When you really dive into it, it really, really, really hooks you. If you like the gameplay as it is, the card deck system is really what's going to push you over to keep playing, continue logging in hours and things of that nature. Now, again, I'm gonna be building this deck necessarily that caters to my play style. So I don't necessarily mess with wards. I like the usage of them, and I understand the usage of them, but I don't want to waste a card point on that. So I'm going to take that off. The same thing goes for a Harvester Key. I want to keep my card points available for stuff that I'm going to need for my playstyle with this character. So I'm going to bump that one off. I will actually keep the Health Potion and the Mana Potion just in case. Again, I don't necessarily need to buy them, but it's good to have them sitting there. So now that we have the equipment cards already taken care of, now I can go back to highlighting the things that my character needs, which would be, in Grux's case, attack speed, critical bonus, crit chance, and health. So Those appear to be the 5 main tiers that make Rux function. Now, this is another part of this build that I really wanted to put out there for people who are brand new to this kind of system. You're going to be getting cards that have like high power, high value, and a lot of people's first instincts are going to be to just make cards with the strongest values possible. Here's the problem with an approach like that. Let me just pick a random card here and kind of try and go over this. When you gain power in the game, there's a little yellow meter on the lower left-hand side of your screen. When it fills up, every time it fills up, you get 3 points of power. So, there's no possible way you could get more than 3 every single time you get that cycle to fill up. Which means you have to stay out there continuing to get XP by the 3s until you can come back and warrant making a 4-point purchase. Now, 4 is by far not the highest number you could see on a card. There are some cards that are worth 10 points. And the thing that's good about this game, that I feel like it's extremely, extremely, extremely balanced, is that essentially, let me see. If I were to put one major strike, which is a 3-point card, it would essentially be the same as putting 3 of these minor strikes. If you do the math, it actually adds up to it actually amounts to the same exact thing. So essentially what the game is letting you dictate is when you want to get your power spike. How long do you want to wait? Do you want to get everything in one mass burst and have to keep coming back? Like, do you want to tack on 3 major strikes and have to come back 3 separate times for 3 separate upgrades? Or do you want to lower it up a little bit and mix up a 1 and a 2? This way you get 2 upgrades at one time instead and still get that same power value. It's really up to you. It depends on your playstyle because, again, no matter what, the math is the same. So you're not really making a choice on, do I want to be stronger now, or you're not, do I want to be stronger or like less strong? No, you're going to be the same amount of strong. It's just the point of, when do you want that strength increase? Do you want it slowly and gradually so that every time you come back, you could add a little bit more to one of your cards? Or do you want to have to stay outside longer and get massive amounts of points and then come back and then burst all up in one shot? There's upsides and downsides to both approaches. There really is. Like, me personally, I prefer the gradual increase so that every time I come back, some part of my character is getting stronger. Now, it may not be the strongest approach to this game, but it's my approach. It's something that I like. So we're going to close this card off because I'm actually, now that I've pointed that out, I'm going to show you how it works in effect because that's my personal preference. That's my personal style. So I have 2 cards here. This is exactly what I'm talking about right here. This card right here actually buffs both my critical chance and my physical damage. And both are actually big focal points on this character. So I definitely want a card like this in my deck because when I fully trick it out, it'll give me increases to both. Now, my personal style for cards like these, as far as criticals go, I don't actually tack on too much with the criticals. What I like to do instead is actually buff my damage. So with a card like this, I'm going to start off with a 1-pointer so that I can add a little bit of damage when I first get the card, potentially. Depending on when I get the card, I may or may not be able to add a little bit of damage right away. Then I'm going to tack on a 2-pointer, which is essentially making this a 3-point value like this card right down here. And to finish it off, I'm going to tack on 1 more so that this is fully dedicated to increasing my attack damage. When I link and add, the card pops up on the left. You see the 3 axe icon symbolizing that I'm upgrading my physical damage. I have 3 cards tailored towards it, one increasingly stronger than the last, so that essentially I can get this card completed faster than somebody who wants to put, like, this is a good example right here. If somebody wanted to stack this card with 3 major strikes, would they be stronger than me? Absolutely. The problem is they would have to wait twice as long to become that strong, and essentially in a head-to-head matchup, because I finished my card faster in half the time, I can kill him 2 to 3 times and still get stronger anyway, while he's still waiting for that 1 card to build. Now again, I'm not saying this is the approach everybody should take, not at all. But this is the approach that works for me, and again, this is exactly what makes the card system awesome. You can literally make the card deck function to your playstyle. I cannot overstress that enough. You absolutely want to find a character you like. You want to find your niche with him as far as your playstyle, and then you want to go to town building a card deck that further improves your playstyle so that it does exactly what you expect him to do. Now, I tacked on 3 physical damage upgrades. Because I did that, I still get the critical chance upgrade with the fully upgraded bonus, as well as an additional physical damage upgrade that comes with the card itself. So, my early game damage with a card like this is going to be very, very good. Now, another one I want to tack on does the same thing. This also increases physical damage, but not only does it do that, it also increases attack speed. Now, for a card like this, I'm not going to touch the kinetics because I'm going to have a card specifically tailor-made for that later. So I'm going to do the same exact approach. 1, 2, 3, tack it on. Right there, I have 2 cards buffing my physical damage. One slightly increases the critical chance, and one slightly increases my attack speed. Now, that attack speed card that I was talking about just a second ago is right here. Flashfire Piston. This also increases my physical damage and my attack speed, but unlike the other 2 cards, this one is only a 2-point card, so it's very, very cheap to buy. And again, I ran out of minor strikes already, so I can't tack that on. But instead, what I will find myself doing is actually adding speed to this build, and I will tack on one more slight bit of damage because that's something that's very, very important on this character. You want to be hitting hard out there with a damage dealer. You definitely want to be hitting hard. And then I have a Fury card sitting right here, which further increases my attack speed. So when I link this one, you'll see the icon terminology is a little bit different. I have 2 upgrades that cater to my attack speed. When you factor in the fully upgraded bonus, that's 3. So, and then if you tack on the fact that it increases the minute you equip the card, that's 4 attack speed upgrades. Despite the fact that you only see 2 on this card, I actually have 4. When this card is done, I have 4 upgrades to my attack speed with a little bit more damage to go with the other 2 cards. So my damage on this build is looking very, very, very effective. Now, they also mentioned that I would need health on a character like this, which I couldn't agree with more. So we look at a card like this, where Amulet of the Veteran or Adamant Edge, which these increase your physical damage and your health. So again, these are 2-for-1 cards that increase 2 different aspects of the character that I absolutely need. Now, again, my idea of a good Grux build is consistently working on his physical damage with as many cards as possible. So instead of starting with a typical 1 here, I'm going to already jump to a 2 to get even more health out of this. Tack on 1 physical damage, and then tack on a 3-point health card. And there we go. Now we have additional health. Now I'm going to do the same exact thing with the Adamant Edge because it also increases both. Where I can actually, I won't have that, again, it's the same thing. I can tack on health here, tack on a little more damage, and tack on even more health. There you go. So now, I have 5 cards currently made. Now, again, this is also catering to my style. I like to have 6 fully decked out cards on my build. So, essentially, 6 is actually the number of slots you could have for cards, and you could use passive cards in any slot. So don't worry about that. These are all listed as passives. You can use all of these at the same time, so you don't have to worry about that necessarily. Now, the reason why I do 6, like I said, is because when you go into a game, you only have 6 slots to equip cards. Now, one thing I want to point out is that the Prime card does not count towards your 6 slots. This is a bonus no matter what. When you activate this card, it is tacked on top of everything else that you're doing with your character. So do not feel like you're going to be trading off one of your hard-earned upgrades just for this one upgrade that only lasts for a limited amount of time. That is not the case. You get this as an added bonus on top of the hard work that you put in. So do not be afraid of that. Now, I mentioned that I have 6 slots, so I want to tack on at least 1 more card. Now, knowing me personally, I might want to go for even more attack speed. Now, I don't know necessarily. I could go for Red Eye Nitro here because it's slightly cheaper than any other card and it upgrades 2 things at once. But then if I spend 1 more point to buy a higher power card, not only can I jack up my attack speed, but you see the fully upgraded bonus is very, very, very good. And it also adds another aspect to the character that I absolutely need. And of course, I could go a different direction. There's so many different ways to go. Actually, but with Grux, this is something that you also want to pay attention to. You want to pay attention to the kind of character you have, because Grux has a bleed effect tied to his kit. So a card like Merciless, look at the unique passive. You get a 9% critical chance against bleeding targets. So as long as the target is bleeding, you have more of a chance to land critical hits. Now, granted, with the card deck I currently have, my critical damage is not that high. And maybe that's something that I can go back and fine-tune a little bit to change up. Like maybe I'll take off one of those cards that tacks on more health and actually buff my critical damage increases and stuff like that. Or if I want to, I could just stand fast and leave it where it is. Either way, this is a good card to have on Grux, so this is exactly where I'm going to go with it. And this will actually help me tack on more critical chances. So I am going to work on that. I'm going to tack on one card for that. I am going to work on my attack speed a little bit more. And then I will tack on one more for critical chances. So, there you have it. 6 cards built in. Essentially, all it comes down to from here on is me deciding what I want to upgrade, like in what order. Because me personally, I would advise you not to buy 5 to 6 different cards at once. I would advise you to actually put the time in to fully complete the cards first, so that you have those fully upgraded bonuses going to the next card. You're just going to remain powerful and all that other good stuff. It's going to be a good look. Now, again, the one area with this build that I'm severely lacking in would be the actual critical bonus. That's about it. So you could make an argument that maybe I should have went, instead of Merciless, I should have in fact went for Blast Harness, because then I could tack on attack speed, and then when it's fully upgraded, boom, I have that critical bonus just sitting there for when it does kick in. But again, that plays more into your play style, what you prefer. And me personally, I've seen that if you have good physical damage, you can hurt people really fast, regardless whether or not your criticals are up to par or not. You're still going to be hurting people pretty often, like really fast. So I'm going to rename this card deck so that I can actually notice it when I play the character. Whoop, can't spell. And there you go. Everything that you do automatically saves. So then all you have to do is just back away, and there goes the card sitting right there. So now with this kind of card deck, I have 72% of my cards tailored into my offense, 24% tailored into my defense, and 3% tailored into my utility. Now, is this a hardcore, absolute go-to way to run this character? Absolutely not. But for my play style, it works. This is exactly the kind of play style that I like to go for. So this is just something that's tailor-made for me, and I just wanted to show how you can manipulate your builds to cater to your play style. So again, if you're interested in this game, get past those early games against the bots. Don't take the game for what it is playing those bots. It is the most boring thing in the world, but trust me, there's a lot of fun to be had the minute you start playing against other players. When you start playing against real people, then you see the genuine value of the game. You see what it's all about. I am going to tack on another video after I finish recording this one. Because I want to showcase this build and see how it came out, see if there's anything we can improve. Because that's really the best way to know what you got. You got to go out there and play with it and see what it's like when it's fully powered up, and then go from there and see what you got. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Again, I absolutely love the card deck system in this game. It's very, very good. That would be my 7th, if I could do math. That's my 7th deck right now. So I have 7 viable characters that I can jump to whenever I want and essentially get things done. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. As always, I appreciate the support. Something a little different on the channel, something I've wanted to do. Hopefully you stood with me on this. I know it's not Heroes, so bear with me on that. Like I said, I kind of wanted to diversify the channel a little bit, and I'm genuinely enjoying Paragon just as much as I'm enjoying Heroes, so it's something different to add in the channel. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. As always, I appreciate the support. Keep an eye out for that other video with Grux, because we are going to be play testing this build to see how it came out, see if it's good, or to see if it sucks. Either way, we're going to see what happens. As always, this is Achilles LBT. That's Achilles with the Z. Remember it.